functioning product. You've got Ethereum, which pretty well, which has a fairly significant, and Bitcoin, which has a significant first mover advantage. So how is Cardano going to be relevant as time goes on, as more projects are based off the Ethereum platform? How does Cardano start to eat into that ecosystem and stay relevant when the academic review process that takes so long?
What's good, y'all? What's good, y'all? So in this video, Cardano. Why has it been taking so long? Why have they spent years doing peer-reviewed papers? And what do they plan to do in order to actually compete with Ethereum and other competitors who have the advantage of first mover advantage? Let's get into it.
Well, there's a couple of misconceptions. The first misconception is peer review somehow dramatically slows down the development time. I argue is it slows it down on the front end, but you actually get huge accelerations on the back end. And I have a real life example of this. Ethereum has been wanting to go to proof of stake since 2015, as far as I can tell. So it's about 3 years that they've been working on this problem diligently. Not following a peer review process, following more of a traditional engineering, let's just think about it real hard and keep redesigning until we come up with something interesting approach. We started Ouroboros' research in mid-2016. Okay, so they had a significant lead on us. So far, we've published now two and soon to be three major results that, in our view, solve all the problems of proof of stake. It's dynamically available. It bootstraps from the Genesis block, just like proof of work does. We proved it in global universal composability. It's fast as hell. It's got all these beautiful features with it, and we've already implemented it in Haskell and in Rust. Meanwhile, have they launched Casper? No. And we have a version of Ouroboros in a live system with $10 billion of value behind it. So I followed a peer review process, and I went to California and showed it off at Crypto 17, and we're going to Israel to show it off at Eurocrypt 18. We introduced it to all of our academic peers, and now they're thinking about it, trying to break it, emailing us suggestions. So we've activated the academy, and we're getting great feedback from people all around, and we spent about half the time they've spent. And we've done it all in the open.
So not only has Cardano, not only do they have the advantage of, look at all of these hundreds of research papers that we have, that we've built up over the past how many years. The advantage that brings is institutional trust, governmental trust. Okay, think about this. Cryptocurrencies are extremely new. So how are you going to get this entire government to work with you if you don't have the research papers like Cardano does? And then another thing I wanted to bring up, which he mentioned, was it doesn't actually slow it up in the back half of implementation. Which I think makes sense, like really. What else did he say? No, yeah, let's get into it. Let's continue.
For anybody to see, it's all up on ePrint, whereas most of the preliminary work there was done in a closed setting. So I think the first thing you have to recognize is, while it is harder to do peer review, we have to live with these protocols for generations. We've had to live with the sins and the glory of TCP/IP now for a long time. And I do not, like Michael's example with credit cards, want to laden the world with a broken, inferior system that only succeeded because of first mover advantage, not because of the merits of the design.
So one example that he brings up here is that the credit cards, right? When they first came out, they only succeeded because they were the first ones to come out. And so as an example, let's say you want to buy something on Amazon. You need to give them your information, and they can store that somewhere. And now you got to trust that they won't do anything sketchy with it. And even something, not only Amazon, but every merchant that you want to buy from. What Charles Hoskinson is pitching is, yes, this is something extremely important and worth spending years researching, because we are going to be living. Cardano's goal is to become the global financial system. So for example, half of the world isn't banked. What if you could somehow implement a system that you don't have to trust this government or the banks with your financials and your finance system? Cardano, what Cardano can do, they can do that because they've done the research. And as you can see, April 29th, the Africa special coming up soon, we're going to see what are some of the things that are coming into fruition.
So if I can move just as fast or faster in some cases than my competitors, shit, do it. So that's the first point. The second point is that how many people have actually adopted cryptocurrencies for real things? And the answer is none. There's trials and pilots and other things. You can't point to a single functioning economy where the majority of the economy is in a cryptocurrency because it's not ready for prime time. There are no distributed truly systems here. They're all replicated at the moment, which is why CryptoKitties killed Ethereum. And it's the same for Bitcoin. You can't have $10 transactions. You can't have systems built like this. And even if you can get a reasonable technological head start, where's the governance side of it?
Before we've been talking about governance, alright, he has a significant point. We are so early in this crypto space. What systems are actually built on cryptocurrencies that are, like, what technology has actually been mass adopted? I mean, the most that I can say is NFTs. Bitcoin is being put in institutions' balance sheets, but this is really just the beginning stages. It's really, there's so much more progress that has to be made for this to become mainstream, for crypto to be taken seriously. Think about the mass consumer, okay? If you wanted to go on Ethereum and buy something, the transaction fee, let me actually look at the transaction fee on CoinMarketCap here. Okay? ETH gas. If you want the slowest version of a transaction fee, that would be 50 GWEI. I don't know, it's 50 GWEI to USD. Really? Okay. I guess they improved it. I can't really say that I'm... Okay. I don't know if this is accurate or not. What is GWEI? Unit of Ethereum. Okay, so let's say... Okay. Apparently, it went down very significantly.
How do you get to influence or control these projects or modify them and avoid having Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Gold and Bitcoin God and Ethereum Classic and so forth? How do you decide? There's no real holistic thought about the interdependencies of these systems. The other thing is that they're just missing basic computer science in their view. If you can do 10,000, 100,000, million transactions per second, let's say you can, where do you store it? And who stores that? If it's only a small group of actors who are service providers, aren't they like the kings of the system then? They can just decide not to provide you history. What recourse do you have? So you have to shard it. How do you do that? Who's doing that? Well, there's some ideas, but nothing prevalent yet. Same, you have to move the data. If you have 100,000 transactions per second, 1 million transactions per second, even if they're a kilobyte large, you're talking about hundreds of megabytes to gigabytes of data that you're just moving around every second. How do you stay up with that network when you're on a 1.5 megabit connection? You can't. So you have to trust somebody to stay up to date for you, unless you have a different network model. Okay? So I think that first, many of these blockchain ventures, the smaller ones, are focusing on a very particular thing that they know is low-hanging fruit. They know that they can have quick early victories with to show that they've made progress. They can get pilots with. But what happens is always the same. People who are serious get serious about using their technology. And when they use it, they discover it's not as good as they claimed. Every single successful application on Ethereum is looking at off-chain ways of handling their load, whether it's a ride-sharing app or CryptoKitties. I've talked to them all because they want to come to us. And guess what? They all say the same thing. We have a two-tiered system. What we do with Ethereum, which is super expensive and really annoying, and then what we do on our private servers. So how is that a decentralized grid that's going to provide people the service they want? It's not. It's a fantasy. It's a mirage. Okay.
Huge point that he brings up here. He's saying that a lot of the apps and platforms on Ethereum aren't on Ethereum. The transactions may be, but they have to offload some of the data, whatever that may be, onto their own servers and can have control over that. So a huge advantage for Cardano is the decentralization, not only in the staking, where you can just buy ADA tokens and put them on and delegate them and earn passive income from that. Not only is that extremely decentralized, the whole point is actually to be able to provide for the developers who want to create things on Cardano and want to do it in a decentralized way. It's extremely fundamental for Charles Hoskinson.
Okay, so that's the first thing, is that it's a holistic system, and it's a system that requires you to think very carefully about how you keep everything in balance, and there's a lot of protocols you have to build at the same time for it to actually scale to millions to billions to users. The other thing is that even if you've accomplished it, you have to convince people to use it. That's the problem with PGP. Perfect protocol, no one uses it. Does exactly what's intended. Why does no one use it? Let's say you can teach them. You have Mailvelope. Super easy to use Mailvelope. I can teach my lawyer to do it in 20 minutes. So it's not a technical competency thing, yet no one encrypts emails. They don't even talk about it. And had we done that, we'd have a password-free internet right now. No usernames, no password, just click the login. It just works. It's secure and a hacker can't forge it. But yet no one adopted it. So there is a...
Imagine that, bro. No need for usernames, no need for passwords. Wow. Can't even imagine that. That's insane.
A usability and a user adoption component to this as well. And I'm sorry, I have not seen any example in the cryptocurrency space yet of large-scale adoption, virality, outside of replicating existing experiences, like a video game or something like that. So I think that we see great potential. I think that we see great technology in certain isolated settings, but I don't think we see a holistic approach yet. So what I'm trying to do is trying to offload the enormity of redesigning basically the entire internet to the university system and incentivizing hundreds of academics, hundreds of university partners, and eventually industry partners to say, hey, there's merit here, and this is all being done in open source, patent-free. And we all have equal footing to it. It's a common goal. And then we have billions of dollars from the NSF, from the EU, from DARPA, all these places that will pay for these projects to get a kick in the ass and grow. Government funding is already coming, and it's starting to come like a river. And the same thing happened with AI. People got together, they really pushed it out, they got it into the academy at a very deep level, and then we saw Kalo at DARPA. Now, anybody know what Kalo is? Cognitive assistant that learns and organizes. It ran from 2003 to 2008. Anybody have an iPhone? You're using their tech. You have something called Siri. That's where Siri came from. So this is the key, is if you want to solve big problems, you make the problems small by breaking them into thousands of tiny pieces and handing those pieces in a distributed way to many, many different people. And by aggregation, all those people together can solve that big problem. The other thing is we're committing the great sin of Microsoft all over again. It's so crazy how history rhymes. It's so predictable. They say, oh, you can't compete with Ethereum because they already have all the developers. I heard this before. You can't compete with Windows because they have the platform and all the developers. And for a time, it was true. You can't compete with Yahoo, or you can't compete with MySpace because they have all the people. You know, isn't it funny that we're trying to build a decentralized system where you, the developer, are looking at what is best for my customers, for my application, and where I want to deploy. But then at the same breath, we're telling you to get locked into one system and one token that you have little control over. And that's decentralized.
So what he's referring to here is the people who have a strong either Bitcoin maximalist mindset or Ethereum maximalist mindset. And I'm not going to speak on that. I will say, imagine if we had internet where if you had your device only working, this iPhone only works with the Ethereum internet. I can't go over to this location and actually work with any other location or any other internet because everything else is Bitcoin. That's one of the points that he brings up, is we want this to be extremely intuitive and extremely useful. We don't want to be locked in, especially developers, and we don't want to be locked into the system that is the only reason we're using it is because everyone else is using it.
No. What's going to happen is we're going to have an internet of blockchains. What doesn't matter is the particular chain, it matters the standards. It's why the second pillar of Cardano is interoperability. How do we talk to all these blockchains? We're going to have thousands of them. Even if 2 are perfect, they'll disagree because they come from competing cultures and they don't want to get along. Korea is going to have its own thing. Just going to happen, as is China. And there's no technological or market momentum argument I can make to change their mind, because that's what's wired in. Let's build our own. And probably the same for India as well, the way things go. So my view is you have to take a holistic view. My view is that you have to take an internet of blockchains view. And my view is you have to take a freedom view and say to the developer, to the user, you're not loyal to Bitcoin. You're not loyal to Ethereum. You're loyal to the utility of the protocol, and just like pipes, if you can't use A because it's too expensive and congested, you can use B. Could you imagine the internet constructed the way cryptocurrencies are, where you have the Bitcoin circuits and you have the Ethereum pipes, the Ethereum fiber optic cables and so forth, and then when you get an internet subscription, you can only use the Bitcoin network, they only use the Bitcoin fiber optic cable? Could you imagine that? And that gets congested, and that's just your user experience. You're locked in, you can't switch, so sorry. That's the world these people are trying to inflict upon us by this centrality. Why? Because they want to make money. If you use their token, the token gets valuable, and they have 10% of the token. And that's why people are on Forbes now. Okay, so we have to be smarter. We have to learn from history. We have to see how the internet evolved. We have to see how operating systems evolve and application development evolved. We have to see how science works. And we have to understand that the only way we're going to get our way out of this mess without centralizing, without cursing the next generation to yet another bad standard, but this time it works on a cell phone, so it's okay, is by embracing a multi-blockchain environment where everybody has a fair shot at it. And sometimes I'm up and sometimes I'm down. I didn't sign up to make Cardano the best blockchain in history and everything's wonderful. I signed up to get this technology in the hands of every single person. So maybe we're too slow and some other standard beats us to it. But at the end of the day, I go home with my head held high because we changed the world and we made it a good place. That's what it should all be about, not about how big is my house or how many Ferraris do I have, which is how.
Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that this is a disadvantage, that he isn't looking at it as, I want Cardano to be the #1 cryptocurrency in the world and to have the most market capitalization? Do you think that it's a disadvantage that he's looking at it like, as long as we get the technology out there, even if it isn't Cardano, if it's somebody, and we were the first people to put it in their hands, and we did that, do you think that could hurt Cardano, ADA's price, and the people invested in it as a token? Let me know what you think below.
How some people are rating themselves right now. Okay, do we have time for one more question, or?
I'm actually going to look at one more question.
Okay.
Hi, it's name's Carl. So just two very quick questions.
Hang on, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Flung into the river. Come on, no Monty Python fans here? Shame on you, sir. No national pride. Okay.
So, as I said, just two very quick questions. One is, what you're creating, would you look to police the network in terms of the bad actors, in terms of bad ICOs? That's one quick question. And the other one is, if you do put it out there for voting, are they going to maybe move away from your vision in terms of maybe creating something that's different to what you want to create?
You know, the founding fathers had the same problem. They said, wow, we just won this revolution. We can do whatever we want. And so they had this grand vision of what America is going to be. And then Hamilton's like, wait a minute, if we give it to the people, won't the people just change everything and, you know, be burdened to the whims and fancies of the future living? And they'll just throw away everything that we've done and inflict another tyranny on us. And that is unfortunately what happens. You have to accept it, that you take the chance that society can vote you out, that society can decide that what you've done is no good and embrace tyranny. And that's the way it is. And in some cases, the people in charge, the leaders, they become corrupt, fat, ineffective. They become old. They don't understand society the way it is, not as it was. And so they need to be removed. So death in many ways is one of the most magical things, and voting in many ways is one of the most powerful things as long as it's properly incentivized and people participate. So the challenge is not, are we worried about democracy? The challenge is, have we built a voting system in a way that we have slain or could slay the demon of rational ignorance? That is, that the incentive to vote is less than, or I should say the incentive to be informed about the things you're voting on is less than the value. As an example, you can learn all about healthcare, very complicated topic. For 70 years, my family's been in healthcare. My grandfather, my dad, my brother, all in healthcare. Doctors, nurses, wonderful people. And they have devoted their lives to becoming domain experts in this field. Their vote counts exactly the same as my vote does, and as does the hobo on the street who's never thought of it. So then you have to ask yourself, what is the incentive as a regular everyday citizen to get that level of mastery and expertise about that topic if the reward at the end of the rainbow is that you get the same privilege? Now, from an egalitarian standpoint, you'd say, well, but they're human beings, and all humans have equal potential. And that's true. But from a practical standpoint, it creates apathy. It creates bike shedding. It creates frivolous debates where we worry about person's color of their hair and how tall they are. We worry about build a wall instead of actually talking about real things. And then the elections devolve. Blockchains are not immune to this. If we create a democratic system and inflict it on everybody, it's very easy for people to come in off of mantras like million transactions per second and 300 millisecond latency and free this and free that and we can do this and that guy sounds better, I trust him and I like him. And they're focused on people and they're focused on rhetoric instead of process, instead of rigor, instead of facts, because facts are hard to learn, facts are hard to parse, they're hard to validate. Critical thinking takes time. If you get nothing for it outside of the privilege of voting, well, the system will devolve into chaos. So the hard part for us is figuring out how do we ameliorate that. And it's not an easy part. And it's something we think deeply about. The advantage is we've coupled the printing press with the voting ballot, so we can incentivize it with cash, but that alone is not good enough. And then you also have to have some exogenous notion of who ought to vote, but I can't decide that. You asked about regulation of ICOs. Who am I to decide what is a legitimate ICO or not? If I was an external watcher of Ethereum, I probably would have said no bloody way in hell. It's a not-for-profit sitting in Switzerland led by a group of people who don't have strong software engineering background. These guys don't have vesting for their pre-mined ether. These guys don't have federated control, so as a consequence, they can tap into the for-profit elements whenever they do and bias the protocol or recommend this or that. They don't have a clear business strategy about how they're going to roll out the protocol. No one is there to hold them accountable. There's not even a real board of directors.
So real quick, I want to mention the talk about rational ignorance. I believe that there is an app on the iPhone, Catalyst Voting, Fund the Future of Cardano. And with this, I believe, I say I believe because I haven't tried it yet, next voting round will start April 14th. Well, that kind of already passed. I think that you do get rewards for voting. which or you do get rewards to the more you learn, maybe, which could incentivize people to learn more, to be more educated. And by rewards, I mean you get paid for it. So maybe that helps with the rational ignorance part. I'm not too familiar with it, but I am interested in seeing how. But let's let him continue.
Any normal venture capitalist looking at that event would say, no way, no how. And that's why they didn't get VC money, apparently. Because they didn't want to have those controls. They didn't want to have that oversight, that adult supervision. And boy, did they get lucky. They lost $9 million just to market volatility and nearly spent the other $9 million that they raised. Okay? So I'm not in a position to look at an ICO and say, that's bad. The market should do that, but we should have a fair playing field where people have standards. That's what Project Brooklyn is about, and a lot of these other projects that are cropping up about ICO standards and rating. And the market should provide some of these things. Regulators will provide some of these things. But if we were to build a capability into the system to restrict behavior that would be so powerful that it could stop an ICO, that capability will be abused by basically anybody who wants to. That's the
Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that Cardano focusing on how can we throw this technology out to the world, do you think that is a disadvantage from an investor perspective? Or do you think that inevitably that will lead to the price of ADA increasing and us getting a piece of that? I'm interested to have some discussion. I might be on Clubhouse to have some more dialogue with and starting rooms called Cardano ADA or Cardano Community. And I should open up the floor to conversations. So let me know what you guys think. Subscribe if you'd like to be a part of those conversations.